Welcome to this explainer. Now, if you're an educator, you know this feeling all too well. You stand at the front of the room, you deliver what you think is just a masterful, totally comprehensive set of instructions for the next activity, and when you finish, you look up to an absolute sea of blank stares. Right? It is a universal teacher frustration. You know the material backward and forward, but getting the students to actually take that first step, sometimes it literally feels like pulling teeth. So I want to pose this direct question to you right now. How do you ensure every single instruction is perfectly understood? It really is the holy grail of teaching, isn't it? Because think about it. If your students don't understand the task, they can't engage with the material. Period. Today, we're taking a journey together to shift you away from those dreaded blank stares and right into total enthusiastic classroom engagement.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our core goal today is to equip you with a highly actionable toolkit. We're going to explore the exact techniques that ensure your instructions aren't just heard as background noise, but are actually comprehended and followed by every single student in the room.
To pull that off, we're going to follow a very specific roadmap today. Number 1, keep instructions simple. 2, sequence for success. 3, adapt to student levels. 4, tone and interaction. And 5, check for understanding. And hey, notice how this structured agenda models the exact kind of clarity and scaffolding we're going to be talking about today.
All right, section 1, keep instructions simple. This is the foundation of clarity, and we really must start at the absolute basics for effective communication.
The core rule here is so straightforward. Use short, clear sentences and simple verbs. When you stand up there to give instructions, it is incredibly easy, almost natural really, to accidentally bury the actual task inside a massive mountain of unnecessary conversational fluff. By stripping your sentences completely down to simple verbs and short phrasing, you help your students understand exactly what's expected of them, without their brains getting totally lost trying to translate all those extra words. Take straightforward commands like open your book or read the text. These are incredibly effective. Why? Because they direct students to the absolute first step they need to take. Encouraging them to just read the text simply and directly allows them to immediately grasp the context they mean for the upcoming activity without overthinking the whole shebang. Moving right along to section 2, sequence for success. This is all about building the blueprint. So here's where we shift from throwing out individual isolated commands to actually organizing a logical map of tasks. To build this blueprint, we use sequencing words: first, next, then, and finally. Think of this language as the architectural framework of your lesson. It's the tool that transforms what might otherwise look like a chaotic jumble of tasks into a smooth, easy-to-follow sequence. And this brilliantly illustrates how those 4 little words create such a smooth flow. First, it sets the foundation. It introduces the initial action so students know exactly where to begin. Next, indicates the following action to keep that clarity and momentum going. Then connects the sequence logically. And finally, concludes the sequence, giving everyone a crystal clear signal that the work is coming to a close. Let's look at a highly practical example of a writing activity sequence in action. First, look at the picture. Next, write sentences. Then, compare sentences. Finally, explain your answers. See how that works? It fosters creativity, sure, but it ensures absolute clarity at every single stage. By breaking a larger activity down into this numbered blueprint, you make sure literally no one gets left behind. Okay, section 3, adapt to student levels. Let's look at A2 versus B1. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we can see this simple language apply across different language proficiency levels. For an A2 level student, your instructions absolutely must be foundational. Read the text, write your answers. You lean heavily on those simple verbs. But for a B1 level student, you can start increasing that cognitive demand. Instead of just read, it becomes read and identify the main idea. Instead of working alone, it's work in groups. The underlying scaffolding is identical, but the interaction and explanation really scale up. Section 4, tone and interaction, bringing in the human element. Listen, delivering clear step-by-step instructions absolutely does not mean you have to stand up there and sound like a rigid robot. The language you choose really matters. Using polite words like please, could you, and my personal favorite, let's, is a highly strategic teaching tool. Phrasing your instructions warmly invites true collaboration. It makes your students feel so much more comfortable and way more likely to actively participate. Think about the contrast here. When you instruct students to do pair work, you're encouraging immediate communication and idea sharing. Then, as they step up to group work, that dynamic interaction expands even further. Interaction is absolutely key to deepening understanding, and a warm, polite invitation to collaborate is what gets them talking. But a quick caveat, interaction without boundaries can kind of turn into chaos, right? That is exactly why adding an instruction like discuss for 5 minutes is a real game changer. Setting a clear time limit for these interactions ensures that your students stay totally focused while giving them a very specific window to articulate their thoughts. It's such a simple addition, but it is incredibly effective for classroom management.
Finally, Section 5, check for understanding. This is the verification stage.
So, you've given simple, sequenced, polite instructions totally adapted to your students' levels. You're done, right? Actually, scratch that. The job is not done yet. You can never, ever assume that your instructions were understood until you actively check. Do not just accept that classic nod and smile from a confused student who's just hoping to blend into the background. Regularly checking means you can catch and address any confusion promptly, way before the entire activity falls apart.
Let's move to and see how this builds across proficiency levels. For an A2 student, you're assessing basic comprehension. Is that clear? Or can you repeat that? But for a B1 student, you want to promote critical thinking. Can you explain that in your own words? Or what is the first step? You are requiring the student to process and verbalize that beautiful map you just built for them. All right, let's quickly summarize the core tools from this explainer that you can take and immediately apply to your classrooms. 1. Use clear, short instructions. 2. Use sequencing words to build your blueprint. 3. Encourage interaction. 4, and this is absolutely crucial, always check for understanding. And 5, be polite to foster a positive, welcoming environment. I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. The very next time you find yourself looking out at that dreaded sea of blank stares, I want you to ask yourself, if your students are confused, is it truly a listening problem on their end, or is it an instruction problem on yours? Apply this new toolkit, refine your delivery, and watch your classroom engagement absolutely transform. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and happy teaching.